Hello, and welcome to Holistic Ambition, where we talk with visionary leaders about creating a career, relationships, and life that is sustainable to your well-being, meaningful, and a lot of fun in the process. I'm your host, Stephanie Thoma, founder of Holistic Ambition, life coach, and author of Confident Introvert. Today we have Bruce Cryer. Bruce is a Renaissance man, beginning his career in musical theater in the world's longest-running musical show in New York City, working in television and film, then moved into entrepreneurship and left show business to begin a long-standing career in the leading edge science of heart intelligence as a founding member and later CEO of HeartMath, the world's leading research institute on the science of the heart. It was during his time at HeartMath that his commitment to living life fully from the heart was born and cultivated. His clients include Stanford University, Kaiser Permanente, Mayo Clinic, the World Bank, Unilever, Shell, the NHS, Cathay Pacific Airways, Mandarin Oriental Hotel Group, NASA, and Yosemite National Park. After fully recovering from a 2-year health trial, Bruce began to sing again, and in 2017 recorded his first album of original music and songs entitled Renaissance Human. Bruce is now 13 years cancer-free and almost 12 years living youthfully with titanium hips, empowered by his heart. Oh my goodness. Welcome, Bruce. There is so much to dive in here. And, I'd love for us to begin with the concept of heart intelligence that you pioneered through HeartMath. So can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, you bet, Stephanie. Nice to be here. Well, the term heart intelligence, I first heard from a brilliant author named Joseph Chilton Pearce. Back in the 80s, he had coined this term to explain the idea that the heart wasn't just a pump. When HeartMath started in the Santa Cruz Mountains, an hour and a half or so south of San Francisco, when we started a little over 30 years ago, we were consumed with this idea that the heart was way more than just a pump, that it was no accident that spiritual philosophies, Chinese medicine, ancient Egyptian texts, the Bible, the Quran, Buddha, all revered the heart. And yet Western medicine in the last 150 years had decided the heart's simply a fantastical machine, a fantastical pump. Yes, it is, but it is so much more than that. And so we believe that because we had limited the scope of the heart to only being a pump and believing the brain was responsible for everything else, that was a problem. And that heart disease in the last 50 years had become the number one killer by far. It wasn't even in the top 10 sources of death 100 years ago. People leave jobs because their heart's not in it anymore. They want to do something else. People leave relationships because one or more of the partners, their heart's not in it anymore. It's not worth the struggle, and they leave. And so we felt there was a tie-in to all of this. And let alone the fact that, ironically, it was right at the same year that HeartMath was starting in 1991, the World Health Organization declared stress a global epidemic. I look back fondly on those years, like that was an epidemic. What is it like now? I mean, now we would call it a pandemic probably because it is so severe and the cost is so extreme. But the idea of heart intelligence was that there is this guidance system in us that we intuitively know. And we tell our kids, for example, let's say you were my daughter and you were going to be in a little ballet recital, just go out there and dance with your heart, Stephanie, or you would tell me before I go on stage to do a speech, just speak from your heart. The audience will love that. Well, do you mean speak with my pump? Do I mean dance with your pump? Not at all. There's a dimension we mean. There's a set of values, there's qualities of the heart that are beyond its actual function, one of its functions in the body. So we began to explore this idea that the heart was an intelligence system, not just a pump. That the fact that intuitively we all kind of acknowledge the heart is courage. You look at these 350-pound guys in the Super Bowl who talk about, my guys played with so much heart today. I'm so proud of my guys. I love my guys. They're not afraid to say love and heart all over the place, but they're not just talking about a pump. They're talking about another dimension. So we wanted to prove out that there was something to this heart intelligence idea. And so we spent years, but within several years, we had enough data to kind of confirm the notion that there was actual intelligence going on in the heart, actual processing of information that could be measured in the heart that was being transmitted to the brain. The brain makes decisions partly based on intelligent information coming from the heart. So there's something to that concept of heart intelligence. It's not just a nice metaphor.
Certainly. And what this brings up for me is Dr. Joe Dispenza has talked a bit about the energetic resonance of the heart being so much stronger than any other aspect, certainly of the mind, right? Where, especially in American culture, there's this emphasis on, to your earlier point, really focusing on, logic and facts. So what I think is so interesting and unique about HeartMath is sort of being able to hold both worlds, quantifying the qualitative and, rooted in different studies and things. Can you speak more to this idea, this concept of energetic resonance when you are living from a heart space, and maybe even a tip that someone who is searching for ways to connect with their heart more can begin to do that?
That was a multi-part question. That was great.
It was double barreled. I think you got it. I can always.
I think I did. So to speak to the point where you quoted Dr. Joe Dispenza, who is a dear friend, and I've known him for years, and he works very closely with HeartMath. So he is the first one to acknowledge the contribution HeartMath has made to the study of human physiology, but human psychology, and the potential for humans to become so much more than we think we are. The science behind what Joe was talking about, is resonance idea, is that the heart produces a very powerful electrical and magnetic signal. The EKG, electrocardiogram, that's a signal. That's an electrical impulse produced by the heart. But electrical signals aren't just a blip in space. That's a field is being created when electricity is charged. So if you were in your bedroom right now, or in your office, wherever you are, and you had a monitor, you could detect a field around the electrical wires in your wall and the outlet. You could feel a field that exists away from the wires themselves. It's not just the wires that have electricity. There's a field created. Same with the heart. So it was discovered years ago that the heart creates an electromagnetic field that can be measured, even with standard equipment that every hospital has, called magnetometers or squids. You can measure that field at least 3 feet from the body. So if I had that equipment with you right now, Stephanie, I could measure your heartbeat 3 feet away, maybe even farther. And that's with standard technology that exists today. How far does the heartbeat really go? It could be way farther than that. But the limits of technology right now can measure confidently it's going at least 3 feet. What we learned was that there's information going in that signal. Just like when you drive in the old days, well, I think this is still true. If you ever listen to the radio anymore, who does that? But if you're in your car listening to the radio and you drive under a powerful electrical transformer, there's interference. Suddenly there's all the static on the radio. At least this used to happen back in the old days. And the reason for this was the tremendous field generated by the transformer above you was interfering with the signal. The radio signal was coming from the station that might be 50 miles away that was being picked up by your car. So in between that field going to your car and you was this interference getting in the way. So these fields are real, and they exist. Every living plants have electromagnetic fields. All living things produce some kind of electrical signal that creates a field around it. You can know in your personal experience, if you're just even physically close to somebody that's very warm-hearted or appreciative, just kind of feels good to be around them. You don't have to even hug them, but just, oh, you feel good. You have a nice vibe. We say that, right? Or the opposite, you can just be kind of close to somebody and feel that, wow, that person's feeling kind of edgy. I don't like being around them. HeartMath was the first group to actually measure what's happening in the field that makes us either drawn to somebody or repelled to somebody in some cases. And we discovered, sure enough, the emotions that we carry in us is carried in that field. So that's the part of the reason why you would feel more drawn to somebody who is more warm-hearted or appreciative, and more repelled by somebody who is more angry or frustrated, because there's something transmitted by their body through that field produced by the heart with every heartbeat, if that's making sense.
It does.
The more we can learn how to manage our emotions, regulate our emotions, be more appreciative of life, more grateful of life, more compassionate for others, more forgiving of others, finding peace in our heart, finding love when it's hard, the more the potency of our field increases. So then the good we're trying to do in the world has even more impact potentially, because it's a stronger signal going out, if you will, to continue using that analogy. So that's been a kind of a fundamental principle of HeartMath, is that we can learn how to regulate these patterns that exist in the heart itself. We can measure that through various technologies that HeartMath has created over the years. So we can actually see the patterns changing in our heart in real time through our smartphone or through a device on our computer. But more importantly, we can learn to regulate that, because we can learn how to regulate how we are reacting to every situation in life. So we just didn't know. I mean, intuitively, the ancients did know this. Again, the heart's been revered for millennia. Only recently was it, no. Don't associate emotion with the heart. Don't be thinking the heart's where courage happens. Like, well, actually, you're the one that's wrong. Actually, there is a truth to all of that. So that was I think the first part of your question. What else did you want me to say?
It was around, yeah. So let's say that there's someone who is watching who maybe they're already heart-centered. Maybe they know that that's actually a blockage, that they're consciously looking to unblock, to allow more love into their lives, to lead with more love, to be that person that people want to be around because they feel the good vibes. How can someone amp up their heart resonance?
Yeah, there are a number of aspects to this. And I wrote a book called From Chaos to Coherence, The Power to Change Performance, which talks more from an organizational standpoint. Some of the clients you mentioned are talked about in that book. But it's also kind of a primer of steps you can take to shift the balance. I think today, that book was written 20 years ago, but today, we'd suffer from, as humanity, from so many almost existential threats, meaning, climate change will get us if hating each other doesn't, if war doesn't, if Chinese spy satellites don't, if pandemics don't, if, in other words, there's so many things that are deeply worrying. And so that adds up to a tremendous amount of stress that we carry. And many people were incredibly traumatized by COVID, right? I mean, if they got it or didn't, if they had a family member that they may have lost, if they lost their job, if they were seriously financially compromised and haven't recovered still, let alone the isolation, the social disconnectedness. So I think a lot of it has to do with, in terms of being more heart-centered, has to do with our connections with each other, and making more of an effort to be kind, to just, recognize, I had a situation happen this week where somebody in a workplace where I am, was terminated, and I knew it was going to happen, and I knew what had happened to cause this, and I was in favor of it. It was the actions that had occurred were very detrimental to the organization and to a number of people in the organization, including myself. So I was in favor of this, but I felt no joy when I heard the word that this person had been terminated, because I thought, okay, this is probably a huge shock. Who knows what this effect may have on her family? That doesn't excuse what the person did, but it was like I couldn't not feel compassion for her. I don't know what this is going to do to the family, but given the pattern that had been going on for months, there was no alternative but to do in my opinion, than to do what they did. So I think people are struggling in ways we don't necessarily know, right? We can see somebody having a behavior that's so unfair or so arrogant or whatever, and we really have no idea what's going on in their life. We have no idea what their struggles may be. And so I feel like most of us need to, in general, be a lot more compassionate and a lot more humble, that we don't know what caused that person to act in what seemed to you so unfriendly or aggressive or arrogant or whatever it was. You have no idea what's going on in that person's life, what trauma they have recently experienced or had triggered because of all these things that are going on these days, let alone just domestic, just living with a partner. Things from childhood coming up. So forgiveness, I think is hugely important. So on the one hand, I think the answer to your question is making conscious efforts to find things that you really are worthy of gratitude in your life. There really are. And it can be easy to forget them all. take a look at nature. I mean, a lot of days, and you're living in San Francisco. I lived in the Bay Area for years. It was like, especially in the winter, I would be embarrassed how great the weather was compared to all my friends in the New York City area. I'd be gloating that they were having 10 below or 10 inches of snow. And I say, yeah, it's only 65 today. It's gotten kind of cool.
It's a cold day, 65.
And a cold day. And I dropped down to 50 tonight. Whoa. And there can be a certain arrogance and forgetting, like, wait a minute, you live in one of the most glorious, temperate, wonderful climates on the earth, Bay Area folks. I'm in Austin, Texas right now, and I understand it gets quite hot and humid in the summer, but a lot of the months out of the year, it's pretty moderate and pretty good. But I guess my point is that there often are so many more things we could be grateful of than we take the time to stop and appreciate. And that can shift the balance to being more in the heart, because to be more heart-centered means literally radiating from the heart, not just as an act, but as a value, as like, I'm putting appreciation to this person right now. I don't know where they're coming from. I'm grateful for, it's a beautiful day, and I'm healthy, and thank God I've got another day. And it can sound cheesy, it can sound corny, but the people who do it realize this isn't corny or cheesy. This is serious power tool. So that's one side of the spectrum, is just to make more conscious efforts to be more loving, be more kind, be more genuine. I think for me personally, as one of the original kind of co-developers of the whole HeartMath system, and from teaching it and developing programs and teaching it all over the world, I having had the acting background, so I was very comfortable on stage, had fun on stage, and like, have something go wrong, I'll turn it into something fun. If the computer shuts down, no problem, I'll make this a fun, memorable event for people somehow. I had that capacity, but at a certain point, I also realized I wasn't as deep in my heart as I could have been. I was more of a performer, not literally performing, doing a speech, and not that, but more from my head and not as genuine from my heart, using examples from my life to illustrate points I was making, instead of just the science of HeartMath or the tools of HeartMath or the philosophy we developed around it. So trying to just be more authentic was part of my process. But that also meant acknowledging the down moments, the dark moments. And I went through this period, and I think you referred to it in the bio, that I'm a cancer survivor, and that was a scary diagnosis, as it is for anybody who gets that diagnosis. And I had surgery and I had treatments, and then I started getting staph infections, and then the staph infections spread to my blood, which is another life-threatening condition. So I was dealing with two at the same time. And that's emotionally, it's one thing what my body was going through. Emotionally, that's a whole other story. Spiritually, that's a whole other story. The questions and the doubts and the fears that invariably can come up. And you're human, right? How would you not feel those things if you try to just push them down and just go to gratitude, just keep going to gratitude? I found that did not actually work, because I found that I had to open up to grief and fear, not to dwell on them, not to wallow in them, but to acknowledge that this is part of me. This is part of what's going on right now. And my way through it is to go through it and to allow myself to go through it. And what I discovered in that process was a far more grateful heart, a far more youthful energy, a far more dynamic, passionate energy, because instead of avoiding I'll call them dark emotions, they're just part of life, right? We all have them many times a day sometimes. Instead of being afraid of the dark, so to speak, I kind of like, okay, I'll feel it. I don't like feeling this, but I know I need to feel it. And before long, it was like, yeah, I have to feel this. I have to allow myself to feel it, then let go of it. Let go of it, replace that with love. But what I found in that process was far more love, far more passion, far more enthusiasm for life. I think I come across younger than I did 15 years ago because of that. I feel far more alive. And that would not have happened, in my opinion, had I not been willing to really experience the darker moments, the darker feelings. Again, not to go down the tubes with it. And I've always had great friends to support me in all that. But the stressful emotions are human, normal. If we weren't feeling them the last 3 years, I'm worried about you because at some point there's going to be a crack, Because if you really weren't feeling it in the last few years, something at some point is going to burst. So if you were feeling it and pretty down, yay, we're all in this together. It's okay. It's okay. And we're going to get through this together by being more compassionate and being more loving and just doing that. But doing that for ourselves too, like loving the parts of us that do feel hurt or do feel guilty that, boy, I should have, I'm a heart guy. I'm a HeartMath guy. I should have been doing better than that. I got angry with that person. How I shouldn't have had to do that. But instead of judging myself, to love myself for like how much I do care and how much my efforts have always been my whole life to put others first and to love others and care for others and to appreciate that about myself instead of judging myself for when I slip. And that's been a huge lesson for me.
Yeah. And what, key points here have to really do with what we've seen reflected in several studies around people who live to be 100 plus, that tend to have a very strong sense of community and support systems. And, you really brought it full circle with mentioning that not only, being in community, but having the sense of presence and being able to go into the darker places, but not falling into total lone wolf mode, but rather still being open to, expressing gratitude for your life, but also, a real key here I'm sensing is this connectivity with others and, seeing as so many people are at different parts of their journey, mentorship comes up and, I know creativity is a huge part of your life. And I would love for you to tell us how different ways that you help people uncover their innate creativity.
Well, that's a great joy of mine. I'm calling myself the Pied Piper of creativity because I feel like I was very fortunate in that I had two very creative parents who had very straight jobs. My mother was a school teacher in a high school in New Jersey. My father worked for an insurance company in Manhattan, his whole adult life, basically. And so their jobs were fairly, quote, normal. But my mother was a brilliant artist, like museum quality artist in many, many different styles of art. My father was a wonderful gardener, but he also was an incredible singer. And so anything that I wanted to do, I was kind of, yeah, go for it. Go for it. We're right behind you. So I had the opportunity to become a singer and then become a dancer and have a career in New York, as you mentioned, as an actor, and started in a little art business with my girlfriend at the time because an astrologer of all people told me I had art in my chart. And I said, no. My mother is the artist. And I have two brothers that are artists. I'm not artistic at all. She said, no, yes, you are. It's right here in your chart. You could be a set designer, costume designer, whatever you want. I said, no, that's not me. Like 3 months later, I had an art business, thanks to my girlfriend who kept saying, yes, I've been telling you, you have art in you. So anyway, I had kind of at a fairly young age accepted the idea that I had certain artistic skills. But then it kind of went on hold for many years. I didn't actively pursue most of it. And especially in the years when I was CEO of HeartMath, I was so involved, traveling all over the world, 100,000 miles a year, teaching a lot, helping to run the organization as CEO. So it was very consuming. And I wasn't singing, I wasn't dancing, I wasn't doing other things that were more creative in those ways. And then when I got sick for a couple of years and finally came out of it, this urge to sing came out again, and I had to honor it. And I started to work with a guy, and little by little, I was kind of embracing the idea that I was at heart a creative person. And that led me to realize actually everybody is, because I happen to have certain artistic things that are public. So that makes people think, oh, Bruce is really creative. He's really good at photography, and he's a singer, and he's a dancer, and he can run businesses. I'm saying, no, you got it wrong. Artistic doesn't mean you're more creative. It just means it's public. If people see what you do. But some of the most creative people are the problem solvers, are the therapists, are the people that are able to take very difficult human situations and turn them into gold. And so creativity is the birthright of every human, because we're all born with the power to create life. So I try to get into people this idea that we are all born with the energy, the urge to create life. Whether we ever create another human life is not the point, but it's that same urge that wants us to make friends, that wants us to be artistic, that wants us to, as I did several months ago, just go and move to Austin for a few months and see what happens.
Mhm.
Apparently
Oh
you're
my
going to
gosh.
be doing as
I
you're
love that.
considering.
I know. And yeah, for the record, I might be doing that too. So
Yeah,
Austin is
exactly.
calling.
Exactly.
And, yeah, you bring up so many points about everyone is an artist, whether you share publicly or not, but to be in alignment with this focus of being in community and living from your heart, from that space of true connection to yourself and others. Um, you created this term Renaissance human. And I would love for you to explain exactly what that means in relationship with the concept of everyone being an artist and how it's relevant.
So in my post-surgery years, as I started singing again and dancing again, and then I was starting to do it publicly, people who only saw me as the one of the original creators of HeartMath were like, "Wow, you can sing pretty good, dude," and or like, "Man, you got some moves on those titanium hips." So I get these comments that people would say you're like a Renaissance man, aren't you? And you've kind of been reborn because your health was really bad there for a while. And now you're doing great. Plus these artistic sides of you, you're actually doing again. So they'd say you're like a Renaissance man. I just kept hearing that. And the original term Renaissance man referred to like a polymath, somebody who was a lawyer, but also a fine artist and maybe a classical pianist as well. Had multiple distinct, diverse talents. And so I thought of it in those terms, but then I thought, wait a minute, that number one, that term Renaissance man eliminates half the population. Second of all, that's not exactly what I want to think about. I really want to think about this process of what does Renaissance actually mean, other than 15th century, 16th century Florence, Italy, the Italian Renaissance, or the Harlem Renaissance for that matter. What it literally means is be born again, rebirth, renaissance in French, rebirth. And I began to think about it because in my own life, I realized that throughout my life, new parts of myself got born. And in 2017, I started working on an album of original songs, never even wanting to write a song. But I was approached by these two amazing singer-songwriters named Isaac and Torald Koren, also known as the Brothers Koren, who are friends of mine, about writing an album of original songs. And we're on a call talking about this. And I said to them, does it matter that I've never even wanted to write a song? And they laughed and said, no, because we see the music in you and we know we can bring it out. And I had to think about that for about a week. And then I said, yes, I have to do this because this is it. Because I feel like there's something I will learn in the process of trying to do this, even though I've never wanted to write a song. It was never a goal at all. And
People
so
saw it in you.
as I was pondering all this, I realized as humans, we have this amazing gift that I don't know any other species that really gets to do this. Certainly not like us, where we get to keep giving birth to new parts of ourselves. It's obvious when we're young. You're growing and you're learning how to walk and then run and then ride a bike and then throw and then catch and then do fine things and all kinds of things our body is learning. And then puberty happens and like, whoa, what is this? I hate this. I love that. So it's a wild time. And then there's obvious growth that keeps continuing, but at a certain point, it feels like it kind of levels off. And then we got to get serious about work. And if we have family, then we really got to get serious because now we got other people relying on us, not just us. And the sense of I'm continually growing kind of recedes. Like, well, that was in the old days, back when I was in high school and college, but not anymore. I can't keep growing. And God forbid you hit your 40s or 50s and you start questioning your life. And then everybody accuses you of always having a midlife crisis. And I'm saying that's not what's going on. It's like we are designed to continue to grow, to continue to learn, to continue to unfold. And the old model that we just decide when we're in high school what our career is going to be and forevermore, like that was out of fashion for my generation, let alone millennials and Gen Zs and the next one coming along. That's like so old fashioned. And to me, it's against nature because nature does want to continue to grow. And so Renaissance human is embracing that idea. It's saying that every human has this ability to continue to give birth. We know that people in their 80s and 90s are still growing new brain cells if they're staying curious about life. So to me, the function of being curious means you're going to keep learning. And then by nature, it means you're going to keep growing. New parts of yourself are getting born. So I often am asked, in fact, I've got a guy I'm talking to tomorrow morning who is thinking he needs to go in business for himself to do remodeling. He's never done this. He's not sure he even wants to do it. but he's come to me because he's heard I've reinvented myself a bunch of times. And I'm kind of laughing and saying, yeah, I'm familiar with the territory. I've done it quite a few times actually. But it doesn't actually feel like reinvention. I actually don't care for that term. It feels like that's sort of calculated, like, I'm going to turn into an SEO expert because that's trendy. I'm going to do AI. That's going to be my thing now. I'm going to reinvent myself as an AI person because that's so hot and trendy. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is our soul wants to keep growing. Our mind wants to keep learning. Our body wants to keep developing in new ways. And why put a limit on that? The limits are put by our mindsets because of how we're trained to say that's not a thing. Keep growing. No. That's lunatics that think that way. And I'm saying,
Well,
no, this is the norm. It just looks a little different, but
that's amazing. It's really following your heart, following what is alive and fresh and real and true. And that could change from decade to decade. It could even be uncovering something from years past. You mentioned people in like having a high school hobby and saying, oh, but that was what I did back then. Who says that it can't be, dusted off and brought into a new life? And, from that vein, I'm curious how you define ambition.
that's a really interesting question. I don't use that term a lot myself. Because I guess for myself, how I unconsciously have defined it is almost a negative, almost like ambition can be so much about money or fame or that sort of thing. I don't think that's actually a definition of it. And as you said, you weren't looking for.
But how you view it, yeah.
Yeah. I think my ambition, maybe I can use it as an example as opposed to trying to define it, but is to feel like I've led a life where I was providing as much service to humanity as I possibly could, that I was engaged always in trying to inspire or educate or amaze or warm people, and that I was making an impact. So that's my ambition, is to be able to do that as much as I can. That's all I really want to do. People are saying, what are your plans when you retire? And I'll say, okay, it used to be you had to retire. My dad had no choice but to retire at 65. And no one's telling me, I'm already past that, by the way. And my mother had to retire at 70 as a school teacher. There's nobody telling me anytime I have to retire. Why would I retire? The work that I do is all about helping humanity. That's not going to change. It's not going to suddenly, oh, I've done that. I've been there, done that. That's who I am. That's the core of who I am. I know that. That's clear to me. I'm a man of the heart. There's no two ways about it. Sometimes I wish I wasn't. Sometimes I wish I had more ambition to have wealth and all the trappings that come with it, so I could move more easily in certain circles or whatever. But I think the ambition is important for every person to define, because I think if it's not linked to a deep purpose, it can be ambition that's for the wrong reasons, for how you were taught that you're only going to be successful, like those people, those parents who only put their kids in the best private school to get into the best Ivy League school, so they are in the best network, so that for the rest of their lives they'll always have the wealthy people connections that can make it all work, because that's what success looks like. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing to do. It's not how I ever raised our daughter, or how I would want to be raised myself either. I want people to be able to know what's in their heart, not just what they're taught or what's been passed down, but what does your heart want? Because everybody is different, and it's not just about what we were taught, and what we are keeps changing, keeps unfolding, keeps growing. Yes, there's certain things that don't change, core things about us, but I think there's a lot that is able to continue to grow and evolve and change, and the ability to stay playful and to stay youthful in the face of unprecedented change like we're living in right now is one of the goals of, I mean, that's my ambition, is to stay young, stay inspiring, stay inspired, stay playful, to continue to laugh at myself when I'm by myself as much as I do. I crack myself up. Things that happen in the house, like, do you remember why you just walked in this room? Yeah, got it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll remind myself, or just, silly things that happen, and I crack up out loud when I'm by myself. And I will always want to be that way, because that's me, and I'm enjoying life. I'm enjoying the frailties of being human, and the fact that we're not perfect and we do silly things, and that's fine, and I get a kick out of it. And so that's a very long answer to your question, what's ambition? But
I mean, it's great. You're illustrating points around keeping things relatively lighthearted and soul-led, because, kind of connecting some dots. It's almost like where the soul can lead is beyond what the mind can even comprehend sometimes. So, sort of, if you were to maybe tie a bow on all of the wonderful insights that you just shared, in a word, in a phrase, what does holistic ambition mean to you?
Well, in contrast to how I was describing kind of the pitfalls of ambition, holistic ambition implies that the drive in you is considering the wholeness of who you are. So while ambition could only feed the monetary desire that we have, or the fame desire that we have, holistic ambition would be looking after the wholeness of me. When I was sitting in the doctor's office, and the doctor told me the large tumor you have, it's definitely cancer. And the realization hit me, instantly. Wow, I'm one of those people. It wasn't just my body that responded to that, even though it was, quote, my body that had the disease. It was my mind that was going crazy. Oh my God, what about this? What about this? It was my emotions that were, oh, what's going on here? And even spiritually, like, why me? Why now? All those questions were going on. So that was a holistic moment. It wasn't just one dimension of me. All of me was responding. So holistic ambition, I love the phrase, Stephanie, because it does imply that drive to want to succeed and do well in whatever the field or the endeavor may be. For it to truly be holistic means you're considering the whole, which includes all the parts of you to be nourished and fed and healed if necessary, but also that which you're integrating with, because we as beings are not separate. As painfully obvious in the last 3 years, we are one interconnected species who've had this remarkable shared experience, deadly and horrific and traumatic, incredibly so, and yet we've all gone through variations of it. So that's holistic. It's remembering all the parts of ourselves, but also remembering how me as a whole system interacts with you, Stephanie, as a whole system, and caring about how you feel about life and how my actions impact on you. Not that I won't act in a certain way, but if I do something and know that it could hurt you or upset you or delight you, you're a part of the system of me, any way we look at it. So holistic ambition is cool.
Well, okay, snaps for that. There's a lot to download there. And yeah, so for anyone who is interested in staying connected with you, learning more about your work, diving deeper into this connectivity with the heart, how can they go ahead and do that?
Well, I use my name everywhere. So Bruce Cryer. So I've got a website, brucecryer.com. On Instagram, I'm Bruce_Cryer. On LinkedIn, I'm Bruce Cryer. On Facebook, thanks to a hacker, I think I'm Bruce Cryer 151. Had to change that one. But look me up in any of those places. The website's got up-to-date stuff, because I do teach courses on creativity at Stanford and other places, and privately, or publicly, I say, but not through a university. And I think I got things going on, so that's pretty direct. But also, I'm fairly active on Instagram and Facebook and LinkedIn, actually all three. So depending upon a person's interests, I'm in all those places.
Wonderful. Okay, so lots of great ways to stay connected. I would love to thank you for your time today, Bruce Cryer, and thank you at home or wherever you are for tuning in and watching. And consider this your invitation to subscribe to be the very first to know of our next Holistic Ambition speaker in the series. Wishing you a beautifully heart-connected day. Until next time.